This review contains spoilers, so if you do not wish to be informed about the plot of this movie, you can skip ahead to this part of the video for the review summary. Okay, so far this has been pretty bad, but this is hands down the worst scene in this entire movie. Even worse than the completely devoid of content bullshit scenes I've mentioned before. The character with no purpose at all goes to her house, wants to take a bath, flosses beforehand, and then suddenly her mouth is sewn shut, like in one of the distorted visions from the Ouija board scene. And then she's lifted up and smacked into the sink. Boom. So, okay, they've added this empty character with no function at all, whose sole purpose apparently was to add to the death count of this movie, and they've spent a whopping minute and a half on her demise? They've even spent more time on some of the useless dialogue scenes. The only justification for her existence in this movie, and they were like, yeah, better not take too long. And I guess that would have been fine, but it was so bad. Everything about it sucked. This whole movie would have been objectively better if it did not have this character. Jesus. So now that Isabella's dead, there is finally some emotion, but only from Trevor, and it seems to be anger rather than sadness. He's mad at Lane for making them play and wonders who will be next. Pete and Lane still don't really seem to care, although they too do want to find a solution.
It's just us now.
Wait, so because Trevor is mad he's no longer allowed in the Cool Kids Club? Also, what about Sarah? She still exists, right? Pete's primary emotion, if you can call it that, also appears to be anger. They go to Debbie's house again to check in that attic she found the board in. I was wondering when they would come back to that. The attic is probably the least efficient storage unit I've seen in quite a while. She checks one bag and finds a bunch of pictures and a creepy doll, and then she's scared shitless by some presence up there that sort of takes her flashlight. And then... just kidding, everything's fine again, they're completely calm. They check the pictures and search for previous owners and instantly find the right ones, and only them. Along with some articles implying that some weird shit may have gone on in their house in the 40s, which is only just manifested now. Apparently a kid went missing, and the other kid, who is now in a mental facility, murdered their mom. So yay, we have a new lead and we're going to pay her a visit. Also, the kid's name is Doris Zander, which explains the DZ we've seen before. This is where basically the entire plot of the movie is crammed into 4 minutes of explanation. Lane visits the sister in the loony bin and she explains her mom was some sort of spiritual nutcase that used Doris as a vessel for spirits. Then she went cuckoo and threw her mouth shut and killed her, after which her sister killed the mom in return. She also explains that the fact that they can see the spirits means that their power is growing and that there is a strong connection between the board and the body of Doris, which is still in the house somewhere. The dialogue was not as awful as in the previous scenes, and for the first time in this whole movie, it gave us something useful.
You played in a graveyard, and now she's awake again.
During her explanation, she states that they played at a graveyard, and that created a connection, which completes the trifecta of broken rules. Apparently there is a secret room in the basement where Doris was stashed. They need to go there and cut the stitches from her mouth to release her or something, which does not sound dangerous at all. Also, they are told not to go alone, so they go as 4 even though she said,
It's just us now.
In the basement, they move everything inside except for the trash blocking the actual secret room, and they suddenly turn the light to the back wall as a means to induce a drab shadow scene where Trevor and Peter are separated from Lane and Sarah. After the split, they instantly know what to remove to access the secret passage, and Lane goes in. Alone. She finds the dead kid and removes the cover as if finding mummified remains is normal to her. Her flashlight starts to fail, and then she decides it's a good idea to light ritual candles. But I'm kind of confused. There's a light beam clearly visible that illuminates the area of interest well enough. Why would she need to light something? Also, why is she not switching to the flashlight of her phone? We've seen them use those before. Then Sarah takes a flying lesson and Lane starts to cut the stitches. And we see the mother spirit appear, but she finishes in time. And so Doris' spirit appears too and destroys her mother. And everything is back to normal. The end. Wait, it's over. Why is it still going? Could it be that there is a clever twist? Well, no, but there is a twist. While not as bad as the Isabel scene, this too is pretty horrible. Pete enters his room and sees Debbie, and as he approaches, her mouth gets sewn shut. Then we get a frame of Pete, and we switch back and see a completely different person with a stitched mouth. Different hair, different face, different clothing. I guess they ran out of CGI effects to do this transition, and so they pulled the oldest switcheroo to replace Debbie with a 10-year-old Doris who was somehow portrayed to be about the same height as a fully grown woman. She screams and Pete turns into a brick. Now his looks fit his personality. Then Trevor texts Lane because somehow he found out what happened to Pete. Also, what's up with them texting each other to call ASAP? Why are they so cryptic? Just call and say, yo, Pete's dead, instead of telling her to call stating something happened. She goes back to Doris's sister, who is suddenly rejoiced because her plan to free Doris worked.
She tried to stop us.
Lane's response to finding out this lady indirectly killed her friends is to calmly explain the plot. There is a weak little tear going on, but other than that, still almost no emotion. Come on, Lane, get mad or something. She murdered your friends. Are you just going to stand there while she maniacally laughs in your face? But yeah, anyway, apparently Doris was the evil one, and the mom tried to stop them from seeking contact. Surprise! So then they go to the only adult from any of their families that stayed here to ask for information, and luckily it's spiritually knowledgeable Nona who explains that to sever the connection, they must burn the body and the board simultaneously. So they drum up the gang to do that. Trevor arrives first and is called to the pool by Sarah, but we soon learn it was the spirit that tricked him and he's thrown into the water. The real Sarah and Lane arrive and search for Trevor, but when they find him, they approach him very slowly, as if they knew this was gonna happen. So they bring the board and want to grab the body to burn them, as Sarah is dragged in. Whereas our modus operandi so far has been to magically sew their mouths shut and turn them into bricks, she now uses some sort of hook to do something to Sarah. Lane uses the board and purposely breaks the rules to attract Doris and save Sarah.
Doris, I'm playing alone, you have to play!
And they, play the game? As Doris starts to turn Lane, Debbie apparently joins in and helps by grabbing her hand, and with the power of friendship and magic, they manage to hold out long enough for Sarah to toss the body into the furnace, after which they toss in the board as well, finally breaking the connection. The end! Wait, there's more? What twist could they possibly still have now?
Hey, feeling any better? Yeah, I guess so.
Stop asking these questions! Stop forcing this in! No, you're not feeling better, all your friends just died! You don't just magically stop feeling like shit because you beat some evil spirit, unless you truly only care about yourself.
I keep wondering about that night. Poor little girl.
No, fuck that girl! Stop feeling sorry for the thing that just decimated your group of friends! For the love of God, have some realistic emotions for once! Oh God, not this again. And then she finds the planchette, and... roll credits! Yes, the story is really over now. This was one hell of a confusing ride. There were so many plot holes, so many things that made no sense at all. The way the Ouija board works seems to be very well defined, but is actually very weird. Its secondary function as a game aside, the purpose of the board is to contact spirits, but the contact made seems to be fairly random. It seems to have made contact with Doris, but also sometimes the mother. Debbie's spirit was shown to be around after she died, yet she was never reached until the very end. And what about the other people that died? Should they not show up in the end as well? Also, towards the end, Lane implies that by playing alone, she forces Doris to play. If the purpose of the board is to contact spirits, then why are there rules in place that, if broken, result in contact with spirits? Is the punishment for breaking the rules that you get exactly what you were trying to do in the first place? And then again, when they played with Five, they contacted her just fine. So what's the difference? They spend all this time and effort on creating these rules, and yet the true rules of the game are not well defined at all. In general, I find it unbelievable that all these people would agree to play such a game. Aside from Lame, nobody really seemed to believe in this shit, but somehow they all agreed to do this? And all their reactions are either fear or encouraging Lane to keep going, neither of which makes sense for people that think it's just a game. But what bothered me most is how everyone seemed to know the game. Up until now, I had never heard of these rules, much less about what incantations to use. I also only knew from context what a planchette was. I assume the people that have never played the game wouldn't have a reason to know this word, yet everyone seemed to be familiar with it, as well as being able to partake in saying the incantation without even practicing. Another thing I didn't really get is why the board would be in the attic. Assuming it was a manifestation of the spirit's power, since it was recreated after being burned, would it not make more sense if it had appeared in the basement where the spirit was located? When they showed the shadow of the kid in the attic when Lane went searching for shit there, I was so sure that the clue was going to be that her body was stashed in the attic, which would have made sense thematically if that was where the board first appeared and where the spirit was first seen without use of the planchette. But the biggest plot holes were actually regarding the whole twist. Most of the info regarding the real antagonist is really contradictory. According to pretty much every piece of information given in the movie, the spirit is supposed to be bound to the location of the body, yet very early on in the story, it is already shown to reach far beyond the borders of the house when it writes "Hi friend" everywhere, a sentence which, considering the story, makes no sense by the way. Also, the entire twist seems to be based around the fact that they were made to believe that the mother was evil and Doris was not. But then, how would any of this have happened? If Doris was not free to act, how could she contact people then? And if it was just her powers that was being restrained, then who killed Debbie and Isabel? If she already had the power to kill both in and outside the borders of the house, then what was the point of freeing her? After she was freed, her targeting seems very arbitrary. If she can kill with the ease she killed Trevor and Pete with, then why would she not also kill Lane and Sarah? And if she didn't have time to do all that, then why would she not start off by killing Lane, who was clearly the main person seeking contact? And when she caught Sarah, why did she not just use her trademark sewing and turning to stone? Why the convoluted hook thing all of a sudden? Why write a gimmick for her if she's not going to use it when it matters most? And finally, why would Doris kill these people? What was her beef with them? I can kind of understand Debbie as she lived in her house, and maybe her presence was bothering her or something? But if so, why her and not her parents? Killing the rest would generally not make sense, and even Debbie is kind of far-fetched. The kid was tormented by her mom and didn't even know these people. I suppose later on they revealed that Doris was used as a vessel for spirits, so maybe the presence was more than just her own. But even if it was just a generic malevolent manifestation, why attack these specific people and not anyone else? Arguably she'd need to make contact first, but halfway through it was shown that the board was not even needed to make her appear anymore. All in all, this whole thing seemed to be incredibly inconsistent and confusing. Okay, that was Ouija. Not gonna sugarcoat it, this movie is ass. Or maybe that is sugarcoating it. But in its defense, it was so stupid it became fun. It was a swing and a miss in pretty much every aspect, and aside from being stupid fun, it had very little redeeming qualities. Ironically, the plot itself wasn't that bad per se, for as far as a plot revolving around a board game goes. It had a twist I did not expect. Not a very good one, but at least they tried to make something of it. The main problem here is that the plot came with too many holes and inconsistencies, and even the big reveal scenes left me with more questions than answers. The idea was there, but it was just poorly executed. The pacing was really weird. I feel like a lot of the movie was empty, and yet somehow there was the need to rush important scenes. There was some tension building here and there, but it was typically interrupted by scenes completely devoid of content, which made it feel much slower than it really was. The writing was abysmal. The dialogue was some of the worst I've seen in quite a while. It is so clearly written by people that have no idea how teenagers behave, of whom you'll start wondering if they've ever been teenagers themselves. One could argue that times have changed, but this being common behavior in the past? I would greet that with skepticism. It doesn't help that there's not that much going on, which results in a lot of vacant dialogue in the first half of the movie. Honestly, I think this might have been better if you hadn't given them a script, but would have just let the actors improvise their lines. The acting performances were also pretty weak. I suppose I could cut them some slack because it's very difficult to make something of the dialogue they were given, but it's not just that. All of the protagonists' performances felt absolutely uninspired, except maybe Trevor. They lacked emotion, or at least the appropriate emotion most of the time, and the line delivery was very stale. It really looked like you were watching actors that read their scripts rather than college teenagers. The only exception here was Lynn Shay in the role of Paulina Zander, the only noteworthy performance. Good job. The characters were very bland. They didn't really feel like they had any personality at all. They just felt like generic templates. This is another reason why the acting quality could be excused, as they probably didn't really have anything to work with, but most of them had pretty emotionless performances, which in turn enhanced the blandness of the characters. It was just a classic case of old people portraying teenagers by reading stuff written by even older people. Some of the scares were actually fine, far from original, and I dare not say that they were good, but quite a few of them worked as a jump scare if you had any volume. I imagine that would have been decent in cinemas. Some of them were poorly set up though, and most of them had a how or why as a primary or secondary response. There was some scary imagery and the look of the antagonist was done alright, but many of the other effects felt cheap or they avoided having to use effects altogether, resulting in a few mediocre scenes that could have been much better. All in all, it was nothing more than stupid fun with a few scares on the side. If you care at all about dialogue, then don't watch this movie. But if you want an easy no-brainer, or something to watch that you can then discuss and make fun of with your friends, then Ouija is here for you.